Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbiteni al me menuchot yenaleni nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo Gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo ira ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni Taruch lefanai, shulchan neged tzorerai, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi levaya. Ach tov v'chesed yudefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim Adonai roi lo echsar Adonai roi lo echsar. We are here today to celebrate the life and honor the memory of Yale Rosenstein, who left us over this past Shabbat after 89 years on this earth. He was, by anybody's standards, a mensch, and I think we should begin today by making note of the fact that it has been observed by many a Squirrel Hillian that if you look up the word mensch in the dictionary, you will find a picture of Yale. He was even-keeled, thoughtful, and grateful for all he had. Going to invite his son Eddie up to give us a few words.
Well, sorry we're here today, but with so many people here, I have to say thank you, because your words this morning really brought my family great pleasure to hear how much my father was loved and all the people who he grew up with that are here and that my parents both have known for all of these years, since 80-some years, and my friends from growing up. And we're really grateful for the words of kindness and the love, and we're really grateful. And I have to say also, as most of you know, it's amazing to be laying my father to rest here, because this is where he always slept the best. No offense, Rabbi. A woman who worked with me on a TV series sent me a Facebook message. I hadn't heard from her in a few years, and this is kind of amazing that somebody sends this after your father passes, but she says, I just saw your post about your father. I wish I knew him instead of you, because he sounds like such a better person, not to mention better looking. It's actually 100% true. And my father was, as the rabbi said, a good man. Okay, I'm going to pull this together. It's going to go good. He was solid as a rock. He was cool as a cucumber. He was honest. He was kind. He was giving. He was loving. And he was the kind of guy who just led with his deeds. You know, he was a do as I do, not as I say. That's kind of the best person there is. Last week, when the end was in sight, I asked him what he was most proud of, and as most people in this room would say, without hesitation, it was his family. But everybody knows that this was his family, all of you, the whole community, and whoa, that's really loud from here, but and it was more than just his wife, who he loved incredibly dearly since he was a kid, and his kids and his grandkids. It was this shul, and this world, this neighborhood, this city, this people. I used to joke as a kid with all the time my father spent on boards and going to meetings and going to people's houses. All the money he donated, I used to say, Dad, the best shalom is getting our inheritance, which the rabbi would be happy to hear. But I was wrong. This synagogue and this community is our inheritance, and he worked really hard to make that possible, and we're very grateful. In fact, my father would never say that he was selfless, because as he described it, making people happy and feel good made him happy and feel good. He called that a two-way street. That was his saying. So I understood as my father came home for dinner at night and then left right after the board meetings or go to people's houses to make sure they were protected for their financial future or whatever, that was who my father was in the big picture. But in the small picture, there was another guy that we saw, and it was the way his eyes squinted, how he laughed. Sorry. How he walked with his hands in his pockets and sat with his legs crossed. You know, you can picture him, right? Eating fast, driving slow. How he kept a secret stash of chocolate in a cabinet and grinned like a little kid when he unwrapped his little chocolate hearts. How he loved my mother, you know, how he would let me stay home from school as a kid if I just needed a break. And then how he'd write to my teachers, please excuse Eddie, he had the bubonic plague. He did. My father was nothing but prepared. He was the most prepared man you ever saw. Life insurance was the most perfect line of work for him because he was always preparing for contingencies. I mean, this is a guy who left for the airport so early that it was often just faster to drive to the destination. It's a guy who once sent me an email that said how to find the family cemetery plot in case he's not around, and the subject line was, make a left at the Goldbergs. He's a guy who gave us gifts like wind-up radios in case of a national emergency, and who rigged a rope ladder out the second floor window for a fire that never happened. And he'd make us do fire drills and climb out the window. And we'd say, Dad, forget the fire. The rope ladder's going to kill us. But that was my father. He was from the whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger school. In fact, I remember one time when I was in college, I called and he said, how's everything? And I said, well, I ran out of money and, I kind of expected he'd send a check. Of course, I drank all the money away or something. But he said, well, what are you eating? And I said, noodles and just, butter. And he said, well, potatoes are just as nutritious. But my father, he was not a hard ass. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry, but as Randy would say, and I should always say that he took all of our kids' wives and husbands, and they became his family. My father's just family expanded, and my wife loved him as much as I do. And she always says, my father was the kindest, gentlest, most honest man she's ever known. And it's true, I hardly ever saw my father get angry. There was this one time after a Squirrel Hill Coalition, Urban Coalition meeting that the whole neighborhood, I remember, was a ripple because my father had lost his cool. I'd never seen this. So I asked everybody what had happened. And apparently somebody said something that offended him, and he bellowed back at the guy, "I might be wrong, or you might not like my ideas, but don't ever question my integrity." That was my father. Humble, selfless, caring, brave, honest, realistic, and giving to the end, to this week. In true Yale Rosenstein fashion, my father wrote a letter to us, to his kids. And on the envelope, he wrote, "To be opened in the event of my death." He handed it to us over 20 years ago. And I never opened it because I never wanted that day. But then I opened it, and there it is. And I'm going to read you just like one paragraph from the end, because I think just give him the last word, because this is perfectly my dad. He said, at the end of a very lovely letter, he said, "One last thought. Do not judge me too harshly. I know I did many things badly or wrong, but I did the best that I knew how. Everyone makes decisions based on their own experience and knowledge. No one has all the answers. Make the best decisions you can for yourselves and be content with the results, knowing that there is more than one way to do anything. In mathematics, there are absolutes and relative numbers. When you get into the really big numbers, the answers are only probabilities." God bless. Thank you.
His daughter Sharon's going to read us a poem.
In the same letter, my father left this reading. He said, "At my funeral, I would like to have read the passage from the Yisker service called 'Our days are like a fleeting shadow.' See attached. It has always touched me and expressed how I feel about death. So, our days are like a fleeting shadow. Lord, what are we humans that you have regard for us? Mere mortals that you take account of us. We are like a breath. Our days are like a fleeting shadow. Death is not the enemy of life, but its friend. The knowledge that our years are limited makes them so precious. The truth that time is but lent to us makes us live at our best. We must look upon our years as a trust handed into our temporary keeping. We are like children, privileged to spend a day in a great park. That park is filled with many gardens, azure-tinted lakes, with white boats upon tranquil waves. The day allotted to each of us is not the same in length, in light, in beauty. Some of us are privileged to spend a long and sunlit day in the garden of earth. For others of us, the day is shorter, cloudier. The dusk descends more quickly, as in a winter's tale. Whether our life is like a long summer day or a winter afternoon, we must inevitably accept the storms and the squalls which overcast the blessed heavens. But there are also the sunlit rays, which pierce the darkest autumn sky. There is enough beauty and joy and gaiety in those hours if we will but treasure them. For each of us, the moment comes when death takes us by the hand, and it's time to go home. It's bedtime for this child of earth. Tired, exhausted, we lay down at last in the quiet nursery of nature and sleep. The day is gone, but the stars shine, in the canopy of eternity.
I want to invite up three of Yale's grandchildren, Shlomo, Moshe, and Eli.
I know our Zadie grandpa is looking down at us today, and I know how happy he is with all his friends and everyone here today. Like Eddie said, this is what he's built, but I feel like the Zadie grandpa that I knew is a Zadie that's different than everyone else here knew. I feel like I only knew the limited version of him. I feel like standing downstairs, there's so many people, and so many people had so many positive things to say about him. We had the honor to meet friends, not just of 10, 20, 30 years, but friends of 70, 80 years, high school friends, elementary friends, people that were part of this shul for 60 plus years. People that told us that he would just come, sit down by lunch, and Zadie would just bring him home to shul, bring him home for dinner. I always knew he was an honest, humble, reliable anchor of the family. Whenever there was anything that was going on, he would always be that person that would calm everyone down, be there for them, and really instill a legacy that he really took from his parents. He always told me, Shlomo, the greatest thing that you could always do is have such a reputation, and the worst thing you could do to yourself is ruin your reputation. You have a family name, and keep that sacred, which is true. He was a man who, whatever he did, he always did it with humility. He kept himself quiet. I didn't even know how many organizations or how many shuls or boards and just federations and how much charity he actually gave throughout his life. He was just always giving and giving and giving and took nothing. I mean, we used to go out to dinners, and I remember countless of times how no matter who was at the table, no matter who, he would always pay and fund the bill. I was shocked. We were sitting, no matter if there were 10, 20, the bill was $2,000. He always took the responsibility and said, this is my dinner. I won't take anything from anyone. And that trait of being a giver and not a taker is something that I really, really took to heart. His honesty, I don't know anyone more honest than him. I was in Israel, and I got a small stipend in shekels. I mean, we're talking $200, maybe. And he would ask me for the tax returns on that. Like, it was a different country, a different currency, nobody would have known. But he was that man that just, you do things right. If you're getting compensated, you pay the IRS. I mean, the IRS was his best friend. He enjoyed giving them money, and I kid you not. He felt loyal to them. He was not trying to find any loopholes. He was not trying to, he just felt like someone that just, he felt so part of everything that he's done. Just a recent story, right after COVID, Bubby went to a barber for the first time in maybe 2 years. And I remember she forgot her credit card. And obviously it was a local barber shop that she's been going to for 50 years. Everybody knew who she was. She said she'll come back tomorrow and pay them. And Zadie Grandpa said no. He was an honest man, and he got in the car and he drove down himself that day and said, I must pay them in time. The examples go on and on and on of how reliable he would be. Family was the most important to him. No matter what would happen, he would always try to find and make peace throughout the family. I hope and wish that I could instill some of the traits that you've given to us, to our entire family, and continue that throughout my family and throughout everyone here.
Zadie, Grandpa, after knowing you for just about 27 years, you've been a big role model and someone we always looked up to. And in the past week, we came in from Israel on Tuesday night. The smile on your face that lit up, and Chevy had to come in a couple hours. You're like, where's Chevy? Always looking out for the next person, always looking to include everybody, and everyone felt so close and dear by you. More than the thoughtfulness that you had for the family, for every single human being. I remember one time the gardeners, they used to come on Mondays, I think, to mow the lawn, and you used to go out in the morning, and you'd ask us sometimes if they were here yet, because you would put out water for the gardeners. Who thinks about that? Who thinks to think of somebody who's doing a service or something? My grandfather, our Zadie, he thought of it, because he cared about every single person, and his honesty, I just want to reflect one story. Like Eddie said, he got mad at me once also. Just once, and that was when every time we used to come visit, let's say I was in yeshiva or I was in school, I would come back, and he would always try to give us a few dollars and say, it's gas money or something, for school. And one time my grandmother, Bubby, beat him to it and gave me like $40 and said, I don't know if Grandpa gave you the money yet, So I said no, because he hadn't given me money yet. So I took it, and then as I was walking out the door, he just slipped me another $40. So I figured he didn't ask me if I got the money. So but I got the call within 10 hours. I got a call. I was already almost back in the yeshiva, and he said, Moshe, you didn't tell me that Bubby gave you the money. Give it all back. So I was down $80. But he taught me a lesson, and it doesn't make a difference of what the circumstance is, and if it's okay, you have to do the right thing. And it was so nice. We had the last opportunity to come back and spend a few days, and how supportive and proud he was of each one of us. And he was able to sit there with all the family, all the cousins, the children, grandchildren, all the different people were able to sit with him in the hospital. And he was coherent, and he was lucid, and he was telling us how proud he was, and he was instilling us, and he was giving us over the message that we should be the torchbearers and continue on his legacy. And it's really an honor.
So I call him Grampy. That's always what I used to call him. I just noticed something that I was thinking about, what he is to me. And what I noticed is that he, more than everyone else I know, he knows how to be quiet when necessary. A lot of people are speaking about what he said, and obviously that's definitely also important. But I noticed he knows how to be quiet. He always knew how to not say something, not get involved with the argument, or not, debate whatever had to be debated. He always got further by not saying something than saying something. And I always thought it was incredible. It's much easier to get confrontational sometimes, but he was able to confront the situation by not confronting it. And I think that's the best type of confrontation. So I'm going to remember that.
Son Yaakov.
Let Me Go by Yale Rosenstein. Up and away, time to fly, make your way. I'm human, not a cow. I wear clothing, wonder how. The world seems such a mess, getting worse, almost fateful. Deep inside, I have hope. Within me, I am faithful. Faith is yearning, faith is burning, faith is joy, faith is hopeful. Vision, I say, is how I can see. And I hope even harder then I think it sees me. It wakes me. It feeds me. It guides me, escorts me. It's my friend alongside me, on the road and on shore. Let me go, let me be. I yearn hope, I feel free. It is awe, it is power, it is God within me. What does my poem have to do with my father? Nothing really. It's just the only poem I ever wrote. But the connection to me is really obvious. It's a poem of hope, of faith, and of freedom. This is who my father is to me. He gave me hope in the darkness, faith for a better day, and the freedom, love, and support to live my life according to my way, my dreams, my hopes, my values, as he did with my brother and my sister. He was really my best friend over the last number of years. Always caring, always concerned, open-minded, listening, responding with fairness, with support. Unless something upset my mother, then he had her back. Jim, just go and tell your mother you're sorry. That's what I did. And it worked. He almost never angered, was even killed. He was our rock, our stronghold, and our savior, so he thought. Sadiqim omri ma'at va'osa harbe. Righteous, they say a few words, but they do a lot. Rabbi Omer, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, Ezo hi aderech yesharish sheyavor lo la'adam. Which is the proper path that a person should choose for himself? Choshi tiferes lo oseh v'tiferes lo mina adam. Whatever is a credit to himself and earns him the esteem of his fellow man. That's my dad. Perhaps his greatest gift to me was this past week when he emerged from the dead, saying, "It's a miracle." And he greeted me on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night when I came into the hospital. Hugs and love and warmth. And he told me the prayers worked. I heard the prayers, unlike anything I have ever experienced. Then he proceeded with his care, with his love, and his dying words and advice and wishes. He rose to the occasion, as he told my mother, and he smiled and he joked. He showed us how to live, and he showed us how to die in dignity and in peace. My father wanted to say his farewells to all his children and all his grandchildren. He waited. Then after finishing what he had to do, which was his motto, he shut his eyes and did not wake up until he died about 32 hours later, following a beautiful family Shabbat dinner with him at home where he wanted to die, listening to the Kiddush and the laughter of the family. My greatest moment of all was together with my two sons, Moshe and Eli, who came from Israel. We said the dying man's prayers, the vidui, the oral confession. Instead of my father freaking out, he lovingly and thankfully embraced the prayers as he said them word for word together with me, both in Hebrew and in English. We ended all by holding hands, saying Shema Yisrael. He told us to go in peace, and I said back to go in peace. And so he did 2 days later. So to Dad, I sing Shema Yisrael number 3, one of my sheets of music from Cantor Taubé. Leva Shalom. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu Mambaram Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu.
Yale was born in Pittsburgh in 1933 to Anna and Thomas Rosenstein. His father, among other things, operated the Squirrel Hill News Stand. Yale and his younger brother David grew up in Squirrel Hill, and Yale was committed to this neighborhood for his entire life. It seems that he rarely wanted to be anywhere else. Family joined Congregation Beth Shalom in 1941 when dues were, get this, $60 annually. Yale attended Davis Elementary School until 3rd grade and then continued at Colfax and thereafter Alderdice, from which he graduated in 1951. Can I ask that if anyone is unmuted to please make sure you are muted? Thank you. Thank you. Along the way, he was called to the Torah here at Beth Shalom as a bar mitzvah in 1946. Yale went on to study economics at the University of Pittsburgh, where he was also enrolled in the Reserve Officers Training Corps. And in his first year at Pitt, he went out on a date with Barbara Freed, whom he had known from Alderdice, where she was, by the way, still a student. And it was, shall we say, not a particularly successful date. They took a bus to Kennywood, and somewhere during the course of the day, Yale declared that he was going to marry Barbara. She was unimpressed. And her reaction after the fact was, I just went out with this crazy person. But she eventually gave him another chance. A few years later, when he was a senior at Pitt and pledge master at his fraternity, Phi Epsilon Pi, she gave him another shot, and on this date, the car broke down, and they spent much of the evening at a gas station. And despite this apparent failure, however, Barbara ultimately relented, and they were married at B'nai Israel in 1955, in the brief window between Yale's graduation and being shipped off to serve the Air Force as a navigator in Abilene, Texas. In Abilene, Barbara taught in local schools, and they learned to speak Texan and occasionally had to manage questions from curious but well-meaning Gentiles about where their horns were. They spent 3 years there before returning to Pittsburgh, and my sense is that they were happy to come home. They lived briefly in Whitehall and soon relocated to Yale's beloved Squirrel Hill, where they raised their 3 children. Yale worked as a stockbroker for some time and then ran a jewelry store in Swissvale, which was called Yale Jewelers, before getting into the insurance business. He became a certified financial planner, and that suited his character. Yale was first and foremost concerned with the welfare of others, and helping them organize their finances was a way to help people in a fundamental way. He worked for Lincoln Financial for 45 years, and although he was busy, he was nonetheless always home for dinner with the family at 6 p.m. before heading out to an evening meeting at 7 from one of his many commitments. Although at some point Yale stopped going into the office, he never entirely retired. There were old clients whom he continued to serve deep into his 80s. He loved this work. He loved helping people. His son Eddie described his work as a calling. It was something that he was meant to do. Barbara and Yale were both involved in communal affairs. Yale served at Beth Shalom, among other things, as the Religious Services Committee co-chair. He served on the Board of Trustees and eventually as president from 1990 through 1992. He was also quite committed to the wider community, serving in various volunteer positions, ultimately as president of the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition. And as has already been expressed, Yale was truly a sweet person, calm, thoughtful, non-judgmental, never alarmist or upset or inflammatory. He loved his wife, Barbara. He loved his family and his community, more or less in that order. Yale used to say that he and Barbara had a fight once, and he meant it. The brief argument concluded with both of them collapsing in laughter, hoping that the neighbors thought it was just the television. He doted on his grandchildren, and although he was not so into vacation travel, he made it a point to be at all the milestone events of all of his grandchildren, the plays, the concerts, b'nai mitzvah, weddings, and so forth. He always took an interest in them and was always supportive. He was so honest, Barbara told me, that once that he was randomly audited by the IRS, and they discovered that they owed Yale money. The auditors were so confused by this that they reran the audit 3 times just to be sure. I don't think that happens too often. He was so proud of this synagogue. Up until the pandemic, he was always here in person, always smiling, always grateful to be here. When I knew that I needed advice on a sensitive matter, I knew that Yale was somebody I could turn to for an honest, measured opinion. He and Barbara were among the first members to make a commitment to our legacy circle, helping us to ensure the future of this institution. Once, Yale wanted to indicate to me that he did not like a particular melody that I used for Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday night. But he was just too polite to tell me directly. So with a kind of a sheepish smile, sort of looking at the ground, he let me know very gingerly, it might be nice if I were to use a different tune at that point. I tried to accommodate his request. He was a talented painter. His artwork decorates not only the Rosenstein home, but also apparently hung in the office of the school superintendent of years past. He loved reading, history, and politics. He had a deep affection for Rachel Maddow. He served on so many boards and received so many accolades for his volunteer work that many of the plaques that they gave him were repurposed as cutting boards in the kitchen. He didn't do this for self-aggrandizement. He did it because he cared so deeply about his community. My final memory of Yale, from when I saw him a week ago in the hospital, was him sitting up in the bed, surrounded by his family, and happy and smiling and talkative, even though he knew that he had only a few days left. And in his even-keeled, subtle way, he told me, "I'm ready, Rabbi. I'm at peace." Ezehu Ashir, Hasameach Bechelko. Who is rich, says Pirkei Avot? The one who is satisfied with his portion. Ezeu mechubad, hamechabed et habriot. Who is honored? The one who gives honor to all others. Yale was ashir and mechubad, rich and honored and loved. And we are all the more elevated from his presence in our lives and in our community. And he was so deeply happy with his portion. He needed nothing else, only to be able to create a better synagogue, a better neighborhood, a better world for all of us. Yale Rosenstein, the beloved son of Anna and Thomas, was a close older brother to David, a committed father to Sharon and Paul, to Yaakov, to Eddie and Randy, a devoted grandfather to Shoshana and Daniel, Thomas, Shlomo and Sarah Leah, Simcha, Moshe and Shevi, Eli, Yehuda, Isaiah, August, and Joy, a doting great-grandfather to Zev, Shua, Yisrael Meir, Rivka, Moshe, Chaim, Menachem, Adel Miriam, and the ever so loving husband of an incredible 67 years to Barbara. May his commitment to family and community be our Ner Tamid, that eternal light which continues to spark passion in the hearts of all Jewish people as we seek ways to reach out and to provide for the others around us. May his love of Beth Shalom continue to nourish and support this congregation, and may his menschlich nature be an inspiration for us all to seek balance and stability and happiness with our own portions. Tehi nishmato tzurura b'tzorah chayim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. I'm going to invite Yaakov back to chant for us the El Malei Rachamim memorial prayer. Please rise.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamramim, Amsei Menucha Nechoina, Al Kanfei Ashchina, B'malos Kedoshim Etarim, Kezayara Kiyamasirim, Es Nishma Savi Mori, Yoel Avram Ben Tanchum, Shalach Leolamo, Bavor, Shenoidrim Tzedakah Be'ad Askaris Nishmaso, Began Eden Te Menuchaso, Lachem Ba'al Rachamim, Yasireu B'Seis Tekanafav Leolamim, B'Yitzror Achayim Es Nishmaso, Adonai Unachalaso, V'yanuach al mishkavo b'shalom, v'namar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Yoel Abraham ben Tanchum Vechana, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful God, we ask that Yale find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And we say, Amen. Please note that Shiva is going to be observed at the Rosenstein home with minyanim the evenings at 7 p.m., mornings at 7:30. The evening minyan will be egalitarian, morning minyan will be traditional. And I'm going to ask at this time for the pallbearers to come forward and those who are past presidents of Beth Shalom and current officers to come over to this side over here. They're going to follow Yale in our Beth Shalom custom as we take him out.